This video is brought to you by Devout Decals, makers of reusable Catholic art for your home altar, your bedroom, and your home classroom.
As I reported to you last week, the Synod on Synodality, in its second all-church session in Rome, has decided to really tackle fundamental changes to Catholicism. They've washed their hands of being subtle about things. Like I told you last week, they now are focusing on decentralizing doctrinal rules and giving that to the bishops in their national conferences. Meaning, in the United States, you could have doctrines of the faith that are different than they are in the European Union, or among the South American bishops, or anywhere else you care to name. That is enormous. And there are now implications for this because now that they've got the guts to just say what they've really been thinking, more highly influential cardinals and bishops from around the world are speaking up, who are participating in the synod and letting us know what are the things they're discussing, including deaconesses. Again, even though Francis has publicly said no to it, I will remind you that he had publicly said no to Holy Communion for the civilly divorced and remarried Catholics, and then he went back on his word in Amoris Laetitia. So he has a track record of saying one thing and then authorizing another later on. And one such cardinal who is saying this is Cardinal Stine from South America. He isn't holding back, as we see in this report from LifeSite News with this headline. Amazon Cardinal lays hands to confirm ministry on women going to, quote, celebrate a sacrament. Brazil's Cardinal Ulrich Steiner told a press conference that he, quote, lays hands on women who will baptize people in the Amazon region, asserting that, quote, in our reality, women exercise the deacons' ministries. You remember, several of us have this theory going that what you're going to see happen is that they're going to bring, quote, back the deaconettes from the early church. Well, what they'll call deaconesses, but were not much to do with the early church's deaconesses. But they'll claim that they were, hence why I call them deaconettes as opposed to deaconesses. That they'll bring them back, and then they'll create a virtual ordination for them. It'll have a conferring of hands. It'll look in every way like an ordination, except for the words of consecration will be absent. Until a bishop somewhere just says, whatever, and actually invokes the words of ordination. And then we'll see what happens. That is our prediction. That's what's going to come from this. Several of us have said this, myself, Tim Gordon, and others. And if this cardinal is active still as a local ordinary, and he is a good foot soldier for Francis, so he probably will be. He's 73. He'll turn 75 in a couple of years. But because he's such a loyal devotee of Francis, he'll probably keep his job until he can't keep it anymore or until he hits 80, one or the other. And he'll be the first, probably, to do such a thing. Here's from the LifeSite article. Quote, calling for a female diaconate, Cardinal Ulrich Steiner from Brazil's Amazon region has revealed that he, quote, lays hands on women who he has commissioned to baptize since they are going to, quote, celebrate a sacrament. Addressing a press conference in Fatima, Portugal over the weekend, Steiner renewed his prior calls for a female diaconate. In our reality, women exercise the deacons' ministries, said Steiner on Saturday. The Cardinal Archbishop of Manaus in the Amazon presides over an area with approximately 1.6 million Catholics. He added that, quote, the vast majority of our small communities are coordinated by women, noting that the role of women in the Church of the Amazon is fundamental. Steiner continued, revealing that he performs a paraliturgical ceremony for women he sends to offer the sacraments within the archdiocese. When I send someone, for example, to baptize, I lay hands on them, but I don't lay hands on someone as an ordination. I lay hands as the apostles did, he attested, adding that it is a, quote, sign of receiving a ministry, and that this person will celebrate a sacrament. Continuing his remarks to the press in Fatima, Steiner made passing reference to the controversy relating not only to the female deacons, but also to Pope Francis's 2023 document, Fiducia Supplicans. These issues are very tense in the Church, he commented. We should not stop discussing and reflecting. And if, in an hour, we come to the conclusion that in the past there was a female diaconate, why not reintroduce it? How was the permanent diaconate reintroduced? End quote. Do you see how all these novelties now and all these claims to be bringing things back from the ancient church into our time, how it's just now a domino effect. You do one thing, and then it justifies the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. Do you see how this works? Anytime a bishop, no matter if they're just an auxiliary bishop somewhere, or if they're the Bishop of Rome, or anything in between, anytime a bishop invokes this archaeologist argument to this, the ancient church did it, we've rediscovered it, so we should bring it back. Remember that Pope Pius XII actually condemned archaeologism. He condemned it as actually essentially a rejection of the magisterium and the guidance of the Holy Spirit of the church at bringing all these ancient practices back. Yes, that would include communion in the hand and a bunch of other things. Well, that's not all he actually said, and not the only place he said it. See, LifeSite was a little nice to him in the reporting, because whenever you see these heterodox arguments, they always bring in other things that Catholics might be a little more open to, like, for instance, married priests. I am not a supporter of the concept of married clergy in the Catholic Church anywhere in the Catholic Church. I tend to agree with Cardinal Robert Sarah, who actually wants to get rid of it everywhere in the church, because he understands that it keeps the door open for heretics to impose radical changes on the ministerial priesthood, and that there were good reasons that it was gotten rid of in the Latin West 10, 12 centuries ago. But he also advocates for that, because they usually do. These errors go together. So, headline from Katholisch: Cardinal Stine supports female diaconate and married priests. Because of course he does. The church doesn't get anything right until it adopts the modernist ideas of what to do to bring the church up to date, because they think that if they keep giving in to secular demands, they'll make people want to become Catholic again. It's on its face laughable. From katholisch.de, which is the official news arm of the German bishops, by the way, we get this quote. Stine was similarly open about the ordination of married men to the priesthood under certain circumstances. In his opinion, married priests pose no problems in some realities, but in others they pose major problems. He also has the impression that celibacy is a major problem in some cultures. Stine stressed that the Pope has not yet spoken the last word on these issues. The 73-year-old cardinal made a statement at a press briefing on the sidelines of the World Synod currently meeting in the Vatican. Around 350 men and women are discussing the future of the Church and other forms of participation for all Catholics. Before the meeting began, controversial church topics such as the role of women or celibacy for priests were outsourced to external working groups. Contrary to what was initially planned, these topics will now be discussed this Friday at the request of the participants. End quote. Radical changes in the church always go hand in hand. Any radical change usually has other radical changes associated with it. So don't be surprised that you see this cardinal suggesting things that the Vatican keeps saying no to, even though they also keep exploring these things. And I'll remind you, Cardinal Stine is a cardinal archbishop from the peripheries. Yes, he's German, but there are a fair number of German bishops in South America for one reason or another. And he's papabile. He is, strictly speaking, seen as someone who could potentially become pope. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be, but don't be surprised if the next pope is someone who follows Francis and is a lesser-known figure. After all, in 2005, nobody would have expected Jorge Mario Bergoglio to very nearly become pope, which he very nearly did in 2005. And then, of course, would in 2013. Now, I'm curious, are you surprised that a cardinal from the land of liberation theology would be promoting deaconesses and everything else, every other grab bag of modernist ideas? Let me know what you think of this in the comments, please. And like and subscribe if you haven't. It certainly helps. So does sharing this on social media. That helps too. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.